What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so want to go ahead and conclude this top 10 ABA players list. It's been fun doing this list with you guys. And at the end of the day, I know that some people are going to have different players on their top 10 list in the ABA, or they may have them in different rankings. But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying, it's fun talking basketball with people that really care about the history of the NBA and the ABA. So just to do a brief recap, at number 10, I had Louis Dampier, the three-point king. At number 9, I had Jimmy Jones, great scorer. Number 8, I had the Indiana Pacers legend, the Roger Brown. At number 7, I had the University of Kentucky legend, the horse Dan Essel. And he was number 7. At number 6, I had the Hawk, Connie Hawkins, a player that unfortunately we were robbed of seeing his prime. At number 5, George McGinnis, a Pacers legend, who unfortunately his prime was too short. At number 4, I had the A-Train, Artis Gilmore, the closest thing the ABA had to Will Chamberlain. At number 3, Mel Daniels, another Pacers legend, walking, talking, and thumping, walking, double-double. Did I say walking twice? I did say walking twice. But he was a walking double-double. I think he averaged for his career in the ABA something like 16 points and 16 rebounds or something like that. Or 19 points and 16 rebounds. So something absurd. And number 2, I had Rick Barry. Of course, primarily known for playing in the NBA with the Warriors. First San Francisco Warriors, then Golden State Warriors. But he spent times playing in the ABA, playing with the Oakland Oaks. Then they moved to be the Washington Capitals. He played for the Virginia Squires briefly. And then, of course, I think he finished off his career with the then New York Nets, which leads us to the number 1 selection, Dr. J. I don't really think there's a challenge to his supremacy as the greatest ABA player of all time. Look at some of his accolades before I go forward as far as ABA is concerned. He's a 2-time ABA champion, 2-time ABA playoffs MVP, 3-time ABA MVP, 5-time ABA All-Star, 4 times All-ABA first team. He was on the 1971-72 All-ABA second team, which I think was his rookie year. 1975-76, he was on the ABA All-Defensive first team, the ABA All-Rookie first team, 1971-72, 3-time ABA scoring champion, ABA Slam Dunk champion, 1976, the last year of their existence. They're the ones that came up with the slam dunk contest, which is an idea the NBA stole, but yet they don't acknowledge the ABA's existence. And his number 32 is retired by the Brooklyn Nets. But it's funny, they retired his number, but they don't acknowledge a lot of ABA records. You know what I mean? Like, I remember when Deron Williams went off for 57 points. Well, they said, well, that's a franchise record. Well, no, it's not, because Dr. J scored 63 points in a game for the then New York Nets. Now, since then, I think Kyrie's dropped 60. That's still not 63, but they don't acknowledge Julius Erving's franchise record. That's the NBA. They stole all of the gimmicks. They took 4 teams from the ABA, but they don't acknowledge the ABA. Well, I do. You know what I mean? And that's why I have guys like Rick Barry, George Gervin, Dr. J. That's why I have a lot of these ABA, NBA crossover guys higher because I count when they played in the ABA. He's on the ABA all-time team, and he's considered the ABA all-time MVP. Looking at his numbers, Dr. J, like I said, I'm not including his NBA numbers in these things. Well, I'll do it for this. I'll say this. If you combine his ABA and NBA career, he played in 1,243 games, averaged 24.2 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, 4.2 assists, shot 50.6% from the floor, did not shoot a lot of threes, okay? Did not shoot a lot of threes, so that's not really important, but I'll just say 29.8% from three, 77.7% from the line, an effective field goal percentage of 50.9, a PR rating of 23.6, and had 181.1 career win shares. I'm checking out some of these nicknames that he had. Some of them are well known, like Dr. J, the Doctor, Doc, but some of these didn't catch on. GW, the Claw, Houdini, Little Hawk, Julie, Super Julius, Black Moses. I like that one though. And in the ABA, his numbers are staggering. They're better than LeBron's. In the ABA, in 407 games, 28.7 points, 12.1 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 2.4 steals, 2 blocks, 50% shooting from the floor, 32% from downtown, 78% from the charity stripe, and probably a million goddamn dunks. This is another thing that I got very irritated at, man. Remember recently they came out with the 5 most influential players of all time, and I think they had Allen Iverson, Michael Jordan, Julius Erving, not Julius Erving, excuse me, Steph Curry. I think they had Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson, Steph Curry. I think they had LeBron James and somebody else. Somebody else was on the list. And I said, where the hell is Julius Erving at? Julius Erving was a rebel when he first came into being known. You know, he's a guy that had, later on in his career, he had a little compacted little fro, like the Richard Pryor joint, you know. Had the mustache, little conservative mustache. His look became a little bit more conservative. Then again, in the 80s, you know, styles were changing. But Julius Erving, when he first came out, man, had the big old afro, the goatee like Jerome and Rome for Martin. You know what I'm saying? Like, playing basketball in a style that was not popular at the time. You gotta remember something. There was something intimidating about seeing a black man come down the floor and transition and dunking the fuck out of that ball over whomever is down there. You know what I'm saying? It didn't matter if it was Mel Daniels, Artis Gilmore, whoever the fuck was in his way. He was going to attempt to embarrass you. And he did. He put a lot of people on posters in the 1970s. I don't understand how anybody can have a top 5 most influential players list and not include Julius Erving. He carried the ABA. He's the main reason why it lasted as long as it did. He was their Michael Jordan. How dare you not have him as the top 5 most influential player? He's the one that popularized above the rim play. He did. For two really basketball generations. Until analytics took over and made it more about fucking threes. Come on. That was the most stupid, asinine listing. But and then again, you can't blame them because they don't know any better. But you know what's funny? When Julius Erving started playing basketball, he wasn't especially. He didn't stand out because he didn't have a great jumper, especially when he started out. I mean, he never really developed a great jumper. I mean, he developed a jumper that he could knock down, but he was not a mid-range master. Excuse me, he was not a mid-range master like a Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or Alex English or somebody like that. He wasn't a mid-range master. His game was more taking it to the basket, above the rim, creativity. But that really didn't begin to flow, I'd say, until he started playing in the ABA. But going to the point I wanted to make earlier, though, there's something intimidating about seeing a person, in particular at that time a black man, dunking the basketball. You may recall that the dunk was outlawed in college, which was a method, a step to try to slow down Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when all that did was just improve his fundamentals, especially make him focus even more on his skyhook. In the 1950s and 60s, players could dunk. Elgin Baylor would dunk from time to time. But it's a reason why players didn't dunk the ball that much. Number one, especially in the 50s and early 60s, fans frowned upon it. They thought it was unsportsmanlike. Although I have my suspicions about when they cheered, maybe, when a player dunked, and when they thought it was unsportsmanlike. And also, a lot of times if you tried to do that in a game, you risk being injured because they were going to do some bad boy tactics on you back then. And believe you me, it was more widespread in the old NBA in the 50s and early 60s than it was in the 80s. They really tried to hurt your ass if you're being too physical. The game was more conservative back in the 50s and 60s. It really wasn't until the ABA came along with their improved guard play, because that's the one thing that the ABA had over the NBA. The NBA, well, overall the NBA had a little bit more talent, but they especially had more talent up front as far as big men are concerned. But the advantage that the ABA eventually began to have was their perimeter play, their backcourt play, which is why Rick Barry, when he came back to the ABA, was a much improved ball handler and playmaker. But the ABA had an influence on the NBA that they began to loosen up some of their rules as far as ball handling concerned for a guy like Pete Maravich, Nate Tiny Archibald, eventually a guy like, I'm trying to think of some other, Earl Pearl Monroe, right? But also, the perception of the dunk began to change. And then you started having guys doing it more and more often during the game. But when the ABA-NBA merger occurred, that's when it really, really began to be played up with the acquisition of guys like Julius Erving, David Thompson, George Gervin, who could throw it down from time to time, especially when he was younger, and some others. But the doctor was born in 1950 in Long Island, New York, but he grew up in Roosevelt, New York. He attended Roosevelt High School and played for his basketball team. He received a nickname Doctor or Dr. J from a high school friend named Leon Saunders. Leon Saunders would explain that later on that Dr. J would call him the professor. And in turn, he would call Dr. J the doctor. So it was just between us. We were buddies. We had our nicknames, and we would roll with the nicknames, and that's where it came from. Dr. J recalled that later on in the Rucker Park League in Harlem, when people started calling me Black Moses and Houdini, I told them that they wanted to call me anything, call me Doctor. Over time, the nickname evolved into Dr. Julius, and finally Dr. J. Erving was first called Dr. J by his friend and future teammate on the Nets and Squires, Willie Sojourner. Erving enrolled at the University of Massachusetts Amherst in 1968. In 2 varsity college basketball seasons, he averaged 26.3 points and 20.2 rebounds per game, becoming one of only 6 players to average more than 20 points and 20 rebounds per game in NCAA men's basketball. In 1968, the NCAA passed a rule which prohibited dunking during games, and because of this, Dr. J's in-air artistry, creativity, the forcefulness of his dunks, it wasn't seen. So, as a consequence, we didn't get to see Dr. J's full game being displayed in college. So, the only time the team saw his forceful, fabulous dunking was during practice. In 1971, Julius Erving sought a hardship entry into professional basketball. Although NBA rules at the time did not allow teams to draft players who were fewer than 4 years removed from high school, the ABA instituted a hardship rule that would allow players to leave college early. This hardship rule, if I'm not mistaken, was for players who were financially hard up to attain money. You know, their family was struggling, blah, 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 blah. So that was a loophole. So that's how Julius Erving got around that to play pro earlier. So Erving took advantage of the rule change and left Massachusetts after his junior year to sign a 4-year contract worth $500,000 spread over 7 years with the Virginia Squires. Erving quickly established himself as a force and gained a reputation for hard and ruthless dunking. He scored 27.3 points per game as a rookie and was selected to the All-ABA second team, made the All-ABA rookie team, led the ABA in offensive rebounds, and finished second to Artis Gilmore for the ABA Rookie of the Year award. He led the Squires into the Eastern Division Finals, where they lost to the Rick Barry-led New York Nets in 7 games. The Nets would eventually go to the finals, losing to the star-studded Indiana Pacers team. Under NBA rules, he became eligible for the 1972 NBA draft, and the Milwaukee Bucks selected him in the first round, 12th overall, a move that would have brought him together with Oscar Robertson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Prior to the draft, he signed a contract with the Atlanta Hawks worth more than $1 million with a $250,000 bonus. The signing with the Hawks came after the dispute with the Squires, where he demanded a negotiation of the terms. He discovered that his agent at the time, Steve Arnold, was employed by the Squires and convinced him to sign a below-market contract. This created a dispute between 3 teams and 2 leagues. The Bucks asserted their rights to Erving via the draft, while the Squires went to court to force him to honor his contract. He joined Pete Maravich at the Hawks training camp as they prepared for the upcoming season. He played 2 exhibition games with the Hawks until NBA Commissioner J. Walter Kennedy ruled that the Bucks owned Erving's rights via the draft. Kennedy fined the Hawks $25,000 per game in violation of his ruling. Atlanta appealed Kennedy's decision to the league owners, who also supported the Bucks' position. While waiting for the owners' decision, Erving played in 1 more preseason game, earning the Hawks another fine. Erving enjoyed his brief stay with the Atlanta Hawks and would later duplicate with George Gervin his after-practice playing with Maravich. On October the 2nd, of 1972, Judge Edward Neher issued an injunction that prohibited him from playing Erving for any team other than the Squires. The judge then sent the case to arbitration because of an arbitration clause in Erving's contract with Virginia. He agreed to report to the Squires while his appeal of the injunction made its way through the court. Back in the ABA, his game flourished. He achieved a career best 31.9 points per game in the 72-73 season. The following year, the cash-strapped Squires sold his contract to the New York Nets. Erving signed an 8-year deal worth a reported $350,000 per year. That was some good damn money back then. That was a good-ass contract back in the early 70s. That's a good-ass contract. The Squires received $750,000, George Carter, and the rights to Kermit Washington for Erving and Willie Sojourner. The Nets also sent $425,000 to the Hawks to reimburse the team for its legal fees, fines, and the bonus paid to Erving. Finally, Atlanta would receive draft compensation should a merger of the league result in a common draft. Erving went on to lead the Nets to their first ABA title in 73-74, defeating the Utah Stars. Erving established himself as the best player in the ABA. His spectacular play established the Nets as one of the better teams in the ABA and brought fans and credibility to the league. The end of the 75-76 ABA season finally brought the ABA-NBA merger. The Nets and Nuggets had applied for admission to the NBA before the season in anticipation of the eventual merger that had first been proposed by the two leagues in 1970, but which was delayed for various reasons, including the Oscar Robertson free agency suit, which was not resolved until 1976. The Erving-led Nets defeated the Denver Nuggets in the ABA's final championship. In the postseason, Erving averaged nearly 35 points per game and was named MVP of the playoffs. That season, he finished in the top 10 in the ABA in points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, steals per game, blocks per game, free throw percentage, free throws made, free throws attempted, three-point field goal percentage, and three-point field goals made. But then afterward, of course, we all know the rest is history. Eventually, the Philadelphia 76ers would earn his rights, and he would finish out his playing days playing for the Sixers. But as far as the ABA is concerned, he's their greatest player. Dr. J is their greatest player. And I think it should be remembered, his status in the ABA. One last thing I want to go over is the ABA Slam Dunk Contest. In a memorable contest, Dr. J faced George the Iceman Gervin, all-star and former teammate Larry Special K Keenan, later a star in the NBA with the San Antonio Spurs and Chicago Bulls, MVP artist the A-Train Gilmore, and David Skywalker Thompson. Erving started by dunking two basketballs in the hoop. Then he performed a move that brought the slam dunk contest to the national consciousness. He ran to the opposite end of the court and back and dunked the basketball from the free throw line. Although dunking from the free throw line had been done by other players, including jumping Jim Pollard, and yeah, he's white, played for the Minneapolis Lakers in the 40s and 50s. But hey, one of those athletic guys until the 1990s and 2000s, according to some of these idiots. And it was done by Wilt Chamberlain in the 50s. But Erving introduced the dunk from the foul line to a wider audience when he demonstrated the feat in the 1976 ABA All-Star Game Slam Dunk Contest. And just wanted to give love to the ABA, some of its great players. So tell me what you guys think, man.